Okay, in this video, I'm going to tell you everything you ever wanted and didn't want to know about tuning. So, the guitar can be tuned to a lot of different pitches, but we typically tune it to what's called standard pitch. And on guitar, that means that the strings are tuned to the notes E, A, D, G, B as in boy, and then E again. So the low string and the high string are exactly 2 octaves apart. So there's an E, there's an octave up, there's an octave up. Now when you're first starting out, there's 2 different methods to tune. One is where you tune the guitar to itself. And you do that by comparing the strings. Because on the guitar, when it's in standard tuning, when you go up to the 5th fret of any given string, except one, which we'll talk about in a second, you'll get the same pitch of the string next to it. So if I take this low E and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the 5th fret, that is an A. And when it's in tune properly, it should be the same pitch as the A string next to it. And they're close. Now, you can listen to them one at a time, or you can listen to them in unison, which sounds like this. Now, the further off they are, you'll hear a warble in the sound. It's very dissonant because they're not, the waveforms are not lining up because they're not at the same pitch. But if you notice as I tune it up, as they get closer to being in tune, those waves sync up and you get rid of that warble. The other way is by using a tuner, and this is just a basic little clip-on tuner. And when I play a particular note, you'll see it register there. It's kind of hard to see because it's set so that it doesn't actually listen through a microphone. This type you can set to have the microphone work or use the vibrations that it feels through the headstock. So it can tell me that here that I'm an A and then I'm a little bit flat and I want to tune up some. And I'm using long tones to give the meter a time to kind of sample the sound a little bit. If I do it real short, it's not going to be as accurate. Plus, your ear kind of picks up on it as well. So, each guitar is a little bit finicky though. Some guitars, when you get it tuned properly, if there's any changes with the intonation, meaning that the frets all line up with where they're supposed to be on the guitar, and it's a little bit harder to do on an acoustic to adjust that. But you may notice that certain chords sound better than others when it's tuned properly. So if I play an E, it's pretty much in tune, but it doesn't sound as close as maybe an E, and it depends on the guitar. And I know on this particular guitar, if I take my B string, what I want to do on this guitar is I want to have the B so that it just does hit green. With all of guitars, there's a little bit of space where you can be sharp or flat and still be within the range that the tuner has. And these little tuners are good, but they're not as accurate as, say, a studio tuner or a rack mount tuner. So I know this one I want the B just on the low side of in tune for it to sound the best. Otherwise, if it's too high, that B might ring out a little bit in the chord. And so sometimes you have to kind of experiment with it. So you find that kind of sweet spot where it sounds the best with a given chord. Now, the other thing is that as the strings age, it becomes harder to get a good tuning out of it. And the strings on this one need to be replaced. I can't remember how long they've been on here, a couple of months maybe. How often you change your strings really depends on how much you play, the acidity of the oils in your hand. It's also why it's good to wash your hands a lot before whenever you're playing guitar. It helps the strings last a little bit longer. There's some products you can get to kind of wipe down the strings. I've never really used those. But eventually you'll notice that it doesn't stay in tune like it used to. Also, it might sound a little bit dull compared. The trick there is to look at the strings across the headstock, because you haven't been touching that, so those will stay fairly new looking. And if they're much brighter and shinier than the strings, then maybe it's time to replace them. And so this isn't, I wouldn't record with this right now if I was recording on a record or something, because it's not quite in tune enough for me. And changing the strings would help that. But then you'll find some guitars that they really need to be set up where you just can't seem to quite get them to sound right in tune. And that could be the intonation. The way to check intonation is when you fret a note at the 12th fret, it should be the same pitch as its harmonic. And to do a harmonic, you just lightly touch at the 12th fret. I'm not really putting any pressure, and then strike the string, and you'll get that sound. What's actually happening is the string is actually vibrating around that point. So instead of having the string vibrating like this, it's actually got two nodes, is what they're called. This one's a little bit off, and that's probably because the action is a little bit high on it. As you press down, you're naturally going to bend it. But like I said, on acoustics, it's a little bit harder to adjust because there's not a whole lot of adjustment with the bridge here. So that's why it's important when you're looking at buying an acoustic guitar is to do that little test, get it in tune, use the tuner to see what the pitches are. So we'll take a look and see at my high E, I'll get it in tune, and then I'll fret it, and then do the harmonic. And you see that that's fairly close. That means that all these points along the frets are going to line up properly. Now, that's just standard tuning. There's tons of other tunings that are available. And some of the songs that you might try to learn, you might be finding you have difficulty because they're tuned differently. So one of the most basic ones is drop D. And that's where we take the low string, the low E string, and we drop it down to a D. So it should be an octave below the D string. So there. Now what that allows you to do is that when you play a D chord, now you can get that low string. It has a lot fuller depth. There's also double drop D, where we take the low string and the high string and tune those both down to D. You'll notice that as I'm tuning this actually will tune any given note. It's called a chromatic tuner. But the chromatic tuner is going to help you with some of these alternate tunings. And again, here I have to fret my D a little bit differently because a standard D chord doesn't sound quite right, but then you have regular D fretted like this, and then you have D sus4. A step away from that is what's called dadgad, and that's where we take, and it's double drop D, but now we change the B down to an A. So I'll drop that down to an A. And then you have, basically you have this kind of open chord. And you can do a lot of experimentation with that. I think That's the Way by Led Zeppelin is in Dadgad, if I'm not mistaken. There's several tunes that are written like in this tuning, and if you're not in that tuning, you're not going to be able to play the song the way it sounds on the record. So that's everything you ever wanted to know and probably didn't want to know about tuning a guitar. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.